So, how are you doing today? What did you want to debate?
So I'm also a person who doesn't believe in religion, but I know your views on it because you grew up in a conservative family, as far as I understand. Is that correct?
I mean, it was honestly almost apolitical, but like they voted
Right.
Republican, but it was mainly Christian.
Understood. Understood. So you have more of a connection to religion than you really did with politics whenever you were
Mhm.
younger,
Yep.
right? Okay. So I kind of wanted to go into less of like, how religion is being presented nowadays and more the uses of it and how that can contribute to sort of like a baseline moral framework to build from, if that's okay.
Okay, why do we need religion to build a moral framework to be at all?
Okay, so this is the whole reason I'm making this point is just because like my mother's situation specifically where she grew up. I lived in a low income community, so I feel like a lot of the culture that was sort of cultivated there was very individualistic and like some collectivism was present, but with the way that she was able to cope with her problems. I have a background in psychology as well. That'll be important later, but um, I feel like it allowed her to cope in a lot of ways that, people didn't really show her rather than, sort of build a moral framework around the people that she could interact with. Does that make sense?
Yes, but again, I think that sounds very specific and personal. And
Understood.
I also don't disagree that religion can be a really good motivator for
Mm,
people. Um, of course, I don't think that speaks to the truth value of religion, but
right.
I can still agree that like if somebody believes that like God Almighty doesn't want them to do something or does want them to do something, they might be more compelled to do so. But again, I don't think that you need religion overall to form a moral framework. Maybe it works for some
Mm,
people, and like for your mom in her case, that's fine. My parents are religious and they're a lot more chill than they used to be. So
mm,
I am very much of the opinion that like if you're religious and you're not hurting other people, if you're not like out there protesting gay people or something like, I don't really care. You know, if it brings you peace and comfort,
mm,
good for you. Cool, it's a free country. Just don't bother me about it, kind of. The problem that I have is using
mm.
that to build a moral framework. Are you talking about this just for like a specific individual or overall? Because
No,
what about the
no.
people that don't believe in God?
Right. So I feel like, and this is just sort of, with my experience through talking with other atheist and agnostic people, that a lot of the time, whenever you become atheist and agnostic, it's partly because those beliefs were introduced very early, right? Whenever you're young, you get taught the religion that is basically like in the household all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, they start to grow out of it. So, in order for like them to build a moral framework, they could like create more nuance on their views later. Now, again, I don't believe in religion, but I do feel like it gave me more of I guess a baseline to
Mm-hmm.
sort of understand what choices needed to be made towards my views rather than fully integrating it into every single one of my decisions. As an agnostic, I started growing away from those views that sort of just got me going in a good direction. Um, and
The
rather
thing
than
is
like,
I'm sorry, keep going.
go ahead. You no, you go ahead.
I was
I'm
just gonna
fine.
say that the thing is that like I think I cut you off too soon. Please continue. I
Mm,
wanted to hear what you were gonna say. You were saying that a lot of the time the
right.
issue is that it's introduced when people are too young.
Yeah, yeah. So like partly I think the problem is that like there is no conversation in religion to create more nuance on those baseline views. It's always in the context of the deity that you sort of like go for, whichever one it may be. And it never allows you to sort of build an individual moral framework. So I feel like a lot of the criticism towards religion could be fixed if we sort of like made a more nuanced view of how we can explore it later on in life,
Well,
whether you want to be agnostic or stick to a belief.
okay, but what the religion is completely unnecessary though.
Right.
You can just teach people from a young age about right and wrong and how to make decisions. And then as they get older, that will expand into philosophy and whatnot.
Understood, but on a simple, like, all encompassing type of way, that would work. But again, the reason why I brought up my mother was not because of an anecdotal situation. Like in a
Hmm.
lot of low income communities where you have a culture that's based on either hurting people or, like doing stuff. Specifically mine, where I grew up, I was taught about sort of like what people call gang culture or whatever, but
Hmm.
people hurting other people, people sort of going out and killing for little to no reason other than like drugs or territory or anything like that. And as I grew out of that, I found a lot of my progress to be based on, the baseline framework of what I was working with in the first place. And I think saying that like a lot of people have the ability to do that, it is a very good, wonderful view to say that somebody can grow out of that in a healthy fashion without religion.
I think that
Um,
the main issue you're having here is that religion in and of itself, at least as
mm,
far as Christianity goes, being the predominant religion in the US, of course,
right, right,
um,
right.
it's not neutral enough for that to work. So that would
Mm,
perhaps work if religion was purely neutral, but I would argue that Christianity, at least, has issues intrinsically, like foundationally to the ideology,
right.
that cause its followers to, I wouldn't say think immorally because I don't believe in like thought crimes, but to act immorally in many ways as well, or at least in ways that I would see as incredibly detrimental to the well-being of, say, the LGBT community. So let me ask you a
Understood.
question. For your mom, is where does she stand on gay people?
Oh, I'm trans.
Okay, so where does
Just she stands very well. So
okay, okay, so
in our
she's pretty cool
denomination,
then?
yeah, in our
Okay.
denomination, specifically Presbyterian, she sort of like illustrates the fact that we're very good at being progressive in those types of things. And a lot of the quote unquote problems with our specific denomination is the fact that people are like really judgy if you don't go to church. And that's basically the biggest thing I've had to deal with, which is a very privileged place to be in religion
Hmm.
and being trans.
Yeah, well, I would just say that
So,
most people, especially most like Christians in this country,
mm,
I mean, if you look at the most unaccepting religion in this country,
mm,
it's Christianity. White evangelicals specifically um, have less acceptance for gay people than American Muslims do.
right.
So that is like something that right now is foundationally flawed with Christianity. We can argue all day
Mm,
about whether or not Christianity really condemns gay marriage or gay people or not. But regardless, there are verses that can be interpreted and easily understood, even if they're
right.
wrong, easily understood to be something that is anti gay. And if we're seeing this block of people that are voting against LGBT people, voting for Republicans and Trump and people like this, then I would say that that ideology is just, it's too far slanted to ever be used as like a basic foundation for something or like a
Mhm.
framework. It's not neutral enough.
Understood. So I guess beyond this conversation of like whether or not it's neutral enough, do you think that religion just overall doesn't serve a purpose in the current framework that we have? Or could be used as a solution in like communities where people don't have access to building a good understanding of how they're going to live, I guess.
The main issue with that is that even if you have a society of people that don't have access to the best resources to have a deeper understanding of like logic and reason and all these
Mm,
things, then you still need to have a group of people that all believe the same God.
mm,
So then you would need more than just like, I believe in God, I believe in God, well, I believe in God. Well, okay, which God, and what does this God say? How are you determining what this God is going to say? And then you inevitably are going to fall into the classic scenario, right, in which you have one person saying, God told me that it's okay for me to murder, and the other person saying, well, God told me it's wrong to murder.
right.
And now you have no way of resolving this disagreement with God.
Understood. And I guess in terms of like the agnostic view later on, sort of like shedding your religious skin in a weird way to say,
Mhm.
would you see that as more of a solution towards people who are, going forward in their lives and trying to make a more individual framework for themselves?
Could you repeat the, oh, like sort of leaving
Yeah,
Christianity
yeah.
behind, or do you mean like
Leaving Christianity behind or leaving their religion behind, but acknowledging that maybe they gained some benefit from it. in some way.
Sure, yeah. I
And
mean,
that's
I think that like I don't know exactly what benefit. I guess the benefit I got from Christianity is knowing it really well so that I can debate people on it.
mm,
um, but yeah, no, no, no. I totally think that's a good approach, a mature approach. If you're leaving Christianity for the right reasons, I would say that if someone says like, "I'm not a Christian anymore. I love your videos, Hunter. Christianity," and I was like, "Okay, why?" And they said, "Well, because I went to church and someone was really mean to me." I'd be like,
understood.
"Okay, that's kind of silly. Like that's a silly reason to be against Christianity, right?"
Right.
Um, so again, like I don't condone people just like leaving. I want people to think for themselves. And so even
Mm,
if you are religious, even if you are um if you've reached that conclusion on your own and can really explain and defend that, I'm going to have infinitely more respect for that person than someone who's heavily against Christianity just cuz.
understood. I guess like in my personal view has sort of been like influenced by a lot of changes that I've sort of made around. I mean, like I used to watch your videos, the conservative videos, where you know trans people are sort of like mutilating themselves, and this is weird, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And as I sort of grew up and started pushing myself towards the left side of things, I less sort of attributed a lot of my growth to that Christianity part of it. That actually contributed a shit ton of stuff to my growth. Like from that baseline moral standing of like, okay, we need to accept people, we need to do this because that's mainly what was taught.
Mhm.
And sort of growing into like agnosticism, I see a lot of those values sort of staying afloat in my life later on. So I was just wondering on your stance where religion stops in someone's life from being useful and where it sort of like begins being a detriment towards someone's like development individually.
Yeah, well, I would definitely say I think we would probably agree it's a detriment when it's enforced,
Understood.
especially growing up, which was unfortunately my situation, where it was like
Right.
expected pretty much that you're a Christian, that you believe this, that you conform sort of to these things. Um, so that obviously is a detriment. Now, I am again I don't believe religion, like I don't believe in the Christian God or something, but
Right.
I can totally recognize and I can empathize and respect your journey and using religion to your benefit and kind of with self-discovery and everything else. And I think that
Right.
ultimately that's probably what religion really could be used for in an ideal world.
Understood.
So my solution again has never been like abolish religion. I don't want people to know about it. Like my kids are going to know about religion. My daughter
Right.
already knows that like I don't believe in God, but some people do believe in God. And that's something for her to think about when she gets a little older. That's kind of what I'm telling her right now because she's only 4.
Right.
And she's already asking me questions about God and stuff. So I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
wow, like she's picking up on it fast. But um stuff like that is fine. I think it's more just about like it should be a personal thing. It should be something
Mm,
that if someone feels that this specific religion really just brings them comfort, maybe they really like this one book out of the Bible or something, they're not concerned with like the Old Testament and everything and it all being accurate and everything. They find a lot of meaning out of this one or the New Testament or whatever, who knows. That's fine. I have no problem with that. So like I think it just
mm.
depends on the context. If it's not enforced, it's fine. If someone just is using it for their benefit, it just brings them comfort or peace and self-growth. Cool. That seems fine with me.
Cool. I Yeah, I kind of looked at the Bible later on as I sort of like grew out of it as like a book that I can
Mhm.
gain inspiration off of, rather like a piece of art rather than like an abiding guideline. And I think that was allowed through my exploration of all that.
Mhm.
So I will agree 100% that my and my mother's situation is completely individual. I was just wondering, like, on your stance towards, where religion can be utilized in ways that we haven't talked about, rather than just, this and that. But I do agree on the idea of like getting everybody to believe in one thing to be a monolith of some kind towards like specific types of words. Because there's so many versions of the Bibles, there's so many denominations that focus on teachings of different kind.
Mhm.
It's really hard to get on the same page towards what is the best moral structure.
Right.
And I feel like now that we progress into a society that's questioning a lot of those values,
Mhm.
that a lot of people feel under fire.
Yeah, which is
Because
part of my criticism as well, because people will, and I know you haven't made this claim, but people who have
understood.
argued me before will say stuff like, well, God or religion or Christianity gives us objective morality. It gives us this objective framework. But
Ugh.
like even what we're acknowledging, like it gives us arguably more subjectivity because there is
Mm,
so much contention about what the Bible says and what this really means and who said this and why and when and everything else, that in order for it to work as a structure to even build from, like a foundation,
mm.
it would just need to be more unified first. And there's also issues in that too, and just in getting everybody cut out there.
Yeah, there you go.
1 second. My thing is way too loud.
No big.
Okay. Yeah, that was weird. Whoa, sorry. But yeah, hey, thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
And have a good rest of your day.
no problem. Bye bye.
That was a cool combo. If you want to support the channel, please consider becoming a member today. Members get early access to videos, access to all the stream VODs, and exclusive access to emotes as well. So if you'd like to support the channel, become a member today.